Jambo, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Returns to Africa. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you right now, these last two animals, the wildebeest and the zebras, they've really put me out of breath from all the migrating going on. So we're going to hang back for just a little while, and we're going to continue our expedition in the Serengeti, looking at some of the more avian variety, or those of feathers. Whether like the Cory bustard, the African crown crane, Africa's fishing eagle, the shoebill stork, even some hornbills from time to time. But today we start our feathered expedition with the largest and the heaviest, the ostrich, or known by their Latin name of Struthio camelis, or even by their Swahili name of Mbuni. But before we start running with this bird, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for content on conservation. And if you have a question or if there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, send me an email, which you'll always find the link to down in the description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. Now, while they have certainly earned themselves the name of the largest of the flightless birds, they're not the first flightless bird that we have met on our Safari Mack journey. Who remembers the emu back in Australia? That was our first, and that's only the second largest. But now, I don't want to waste our time too much with the evolution of the ratites, so if you would like to go and find out for yourself how the ratites originally came to be, or at least the flightless birds, go check out the emu episode first, and then come back to Africa. But it's said that the earliest ostrich ancestors started around 40 million years ago, with the more modern day ostrich that we know of today appearing 20 million years later. But the earliest that humans have ever recorded or have ever interacted with this bird was said to be around 60,000 years ago through proof of eggshell art. Now, believe it or not, the ostrich actually started life in Asia before making their migration all the way down to Africa, where they would become the permanent residents that we know of today. Now, in terms of their habitat, these guys are basically capable of living in arid environments, from dry savannas, grasslands, semi-desert regions, including the Sahel region, and southern Africa. Very well adapted to live across these plains. They usually would prefer the open woodlands, where there's lots of shrubs and other forms of food for them to feed, where they are often seen feeding alongside other herbivores such as zebras and antelopes. Now, while their social structure is kind of interesting. They can be both solitary and they can be social. But now, these flocks, usually they number from anywhere from 5 to 100, with a male and a dominant female being in charge. While they do move across different parts, they are not what you call a migratory animal. In fact, these guys are kind of one of those birds that are like, I will travel with you guys and be able to tolerate it, but they don't really form close-knit families. And so instead, they kind of will come and go as they please. Now, when it comes to breeding season, usually, like I said, there's a male that's always going to be distinguished as the one with the black and white feathers, while females are distinguished with brown and white feathers. These birds usually will kind of congregate together to form a breeding group. The males inflate their throats as a warning to other males to stay away from their groups of females, or what we call sometimes harems, so that he can ensure that the eggs that the females lay that he breeds with will be his own chicks. But usually it's always a dominant female that is more of the egg layer, while others will kind of lay their eggs. She will often sometimes push out eggs as sacrificial eggs to deter predators from eating the main incubating group. After After a period of about 45 days, the eggs will hatch and these little guys will appear, and then they will stick with their parents right up until, for a few months, until they're ready to face the world on their own. But that's not to say that they won't come to mom or dad sometimes to be able to hide or stand in the shade or keep themselves safe while being protected under the parents' wings. Now, we're going to skip their diet as it's fairly easy and look more into their influence in human culture. Now, ostriches have often been seen as silly animals, often being characterized by the stereotypical sticking their heads into the sand. That's not really true. Just so you know, ostriches don't do that. Now, the reason why people may have thought this originally was they didn't see that the ostriches were really looking for food or were beginning to figure out which spot was the softest or the firmest to be able to start laying their eggs. But they have been featured in many different forms of culture. In fact, this Egyptian queen, Arian Solis II, is thought to have been depicted riding an ostrich as a kind of show animal, and even displaying ostriches as a form of social status for exoticness and such. And it's even been thought that they were used in chariot teams for grand processions, which symbolized her power and exotic connections to different parts of the known world at the time. Now, unfortunately, that's all the time I have for today's Part 1 episode, so be sure to join me next week for Part 2, but until then, this is Safari Mack, and I'll see you all out there.